is the place for you. Don't need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word is self-approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences. Let love heal all that's broken. If you need truth, this is the place for you. Don't need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word is self-approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences. Let love heal all that's broken.
And shalom aleichem. Good day to each and every one of you. So glad to have you with us. This is yours truly, Apostle V.W. Jones, right here on the Proceeding Word. We got a great broadcast for you, a great conversation, which typically is always problematic. But it is for the purpose of knowing how to live, not just preach the gospel. So today's program is going to be based on what we know. Preaching does not make one righteous or make one saved. There's a lot more to it than that. All righty. So I want to make sure that we get opportunity to chat, share, speak, and begin to do a lot of the things that are necessary in our world and communicate with what else needs to be accomplished for the very purposes of what we do as believers. So I want to give you guys an opportunity to take this moment to see, maybe potentially to share. And those of you who are with those who are in DKM or VWJ, or those who are those who come in on our broadcast for the Proceeding Word, let them know that we are live and we're getting going. But before we get started, let's give you a couple of announcements very quickly. Again, we are here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at about 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, discussing those things that are necessary and effectual for how we live, how we walk, how we talk, how we act, and how we do. But I want to make sure you get this message today. Don't tune out until we get through. So Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, we're here. Then Wednesday night tonight, we'll be back here tonight for DKM, Rosh Kingdom Ministries, under the Bible study, our weekly Bible studies, which tonight we'll be talking about. Yes, he is the reason for the season, but more importantly, he is the reason for this particular season. And we're going to be explaining and expressing yet again in totality, conclusively, the actual feasts, seasons, and why they are so significant. And of course, every Thursday we're here for our 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Bible studies called the Bible Book Club. Yep, you say, why you got so much Bible stuff going on? Because that's the only thing we know here, the only thing we teach here, and the only thing we make major efforts to live here. All right, so we want you to be here for that as we get started in that respect and in that capacity. And then, of course, you know, we're Sabbath keepers. So every Friday at sundown till Saturday at sundown is deemed the Sabbath on the actual calendar of Elohim and your Gregorian calendar. And we are here for that as well. Then after that, you have on Sunday, our morrow after Sabbath service every 10:15 Eastern Standard Time every Sunday, which is what we call our flagship programming here on the VWJ and DKM ministries. So today, we've got so much to discuss and to get into. We want to take this opportunity to let you know that everything that we do, we must reason together in the word of Elohim so that we know where we are and what we're doing for that purpose. Now, I'm going to be having my Bible up on the screen for those of you who don't know, but if you're on Clubhouse, you can go to VWJ Ministries on YouTube or VWJ Ministries on Facebook, and you can pull all of these things up and see us live while our Bibles are up and showing you the defines and the concordances and lexicons that we use to bring you into a definition and knowledge of what we say we learn. We know, we understand, and we embrace. So today, let's get started in that process. But one thing I want to make sure you remember is this: preaching does not make one righteous or make one saved. Christians, please listen. Preaching or preacher forces one to talk a good game, yet it never guarantees the one preaching or the one listening will ever live for righteous gain. Usually when preaching goes forward, it's about likes in one respect or another. So let's talk about it. Let's define preaching versus teaching. Welcome to the proceeding word. Again, we're grateful to have you all with us. Let's get started. I'm hoping that you guys will get the likes up for us over here. If you're on Clubhouse, YouTube, or Facebook, make sure you hit in, tap in, make a comment in our threads. Let me know where you're hailing from. It's good to have you all. Dr. Holland, how are you? Shalom to you. Tell that great husband of yours I say shalom as well. All right, let's get started, guys. I want to make sure we all understand something because I'm watching a lot of what we do in Christendom. And though I am basically a professed, I don't like the word Christian. I really don't, because I know its root. I know where it came from. I know what it means, but I also know what it means to modern day Christendom. I also know how we ascribe to it and we prescribe to it because of the way we were born. We were born into a culture. We were born into the nurtured element of that. And it basically is what it is for us. We are called Christians because somebody thinks that Jesus or Yeshua's name was Christ, not knowing it's a translation and not knowing that Christendom is an organization that started a faith system around the same and covered our Savior's story over with it. So today, I just want to make sure we're clear on that definition, just like I want to be clear on the definition of preacher. Many people think that preacher is a calling. I've been called to preach the gospel. Well, we've all been called to proclaim the teachings of Yeshua HaMashiach. Now, I want to be very clear with this. When you hear the word preach, there are definitions. Oxford has a definition for preaching that means the telling of a scenario. As a matter of fact, let's do this. Why don't I pull it up? I had it, but I lost it. Define preaching. And I want to give you guys this. I think Oxford will come first. Here we go. Perfect. Now, I'm not going to put it on the screen for you guys, but because I got something else prepared to give you. But here's Oxford's definition, the Oxford Dictionary on preaching. All right. It is the delivery of a sermon or a religious address to an assembled group of people, typically in church. All right. There is more to this. It is the giving of moral advice. Listen, 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 listen. It is the giving of moral advice in a pompous, self-righteous way. How do you use that in a sentence? Well, your preaching won't make me change my mind. All right. The other definition of preaching in Oxford's Language Dictionary also goes on to say that it's the delivery of a sermon or a religious address to an assembled group of people. And it is typically something that's in a church. Now, you know that church is not necessarily just relegated to Christianity, but church is also something that is primarily a gathering place and point for like-minded people who share a particular belief in something, and this is where they gather to communicate that vein or subject matter as a group. That's where you find your unity, your corralling and gathering together. All right. So again, I want to make sure we're clear on this when I say this, so you don't think I'm being ignorant or rude, but I want to make sure that we're not running down a road that gives us a false sense of security within our own faith and salvation. So preaching by Oxford, I can give you another one if you want, but preaching by Oxford is a delivered sermon, a delivery of a sermon, or a religious address to an assembled group of people, typically in a church. Now, to use that in a sentence, large numbers of people who could come hear his or her preaching. There was a large number of people who could come to hear his or her preaching. All right. So that's how we use it in that sense. And the second definition I gave you earlier was the giving of moral advice in a pompous and self-righteous way. Again, that's the dictionary definition from Oxford's for preaching. And it runs that vein through Oxford, through Meridian, and several other, even Wikipedia, which everybody seems to be loving these days. So we want to understand what that means. Now, in preaching, as it relates to the Bible, it is the declaring of Elohim's truth in the effort to praise his name. So preaching is declaring Elohim's truth, right? Now, I want to make sure we understand this because just because you're preaching, just because you're a preacher, which every one of you are able-bodied ministers, right? You're all to be able-bodied ministers. We talked about that on our last broadcast on the Proceeding Word. So I want to make sure we knit these together properly, accurately, and we have no eisegetics on this. There needs to be complete extrapolation of truth and the exegetics of the writ to make sure we understand this point today. Preaching don't make you saved. And just because you are a preacher and you are preaching about something does not make one saved. I'm going to get to the Bible here with Paul in a second, but I want to give this so that we can get our taste buds wet and prepared to understand where this is going without thinking we're attacking or trying to shoot down anything within our faith. I want us to understand how to not hold and sort of kind of rest in our laurels on the fact that we can carry the gospel, right? Carrying the gospel is what we're going to address. How to carry it is also something that will be addressed, and to each his own. But let's look at what the writ meant when we were told about carrying the gospel throughout the world, sharing it with everybody, and how it's done. So one of the things that I'm finding within the construct of the religion of Christianity, notice that I said that very distinctly, the religion of Christianity, is the fact that we believe preaching is salvation. Preaching can create an atmosphere where one would accept. It can also become a sales pitch, as it were, but not in a negative way. But it is a bill of sale that this is what salvation is about. This is what salvation is. But it doesn't mean that the person proclaiming those teachings themselves are, in fact, active in that sense of practice. Or, watch this, don't get it twisted, that the preaching of the gospel isn't that the person preaching it or the person teaching it or the person preaching it or the person receiving it will, in fact, follow those instructions. So let me put this on clarity for us. In biblical terms, preaching is the proclaiming of a teaching. So when you talk about proclamation, which we all must make, we all should proclaim. You know, the Bible declares in Leviticus 23 that here are the days, here are my seasons, the feast seasons, which you must proclaim, right, in that season. So the phraseology of proclamation is extremely important because your proclamations are based on the fact that that's how you get things triggered in the atmosphere we call the world. The proclamation of let there be light, let there be firmament, let there be bring forth the beasts of the fields. Those proclamations are verbal expressions that have been emitted through sound that trigger and create in an atmosphere Elohim has primed for creativity. So you and I live in a voice activated kingdom. To activate in this kingdom called the kingdom of Elohim, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven and the earth, you and I working and walking like him, if we're really with him, our activation is based on our proclamation. So we live in a voice activated kingdom. Now, here is what I want you to understand. You can proclaim all the things that you want, but if you do not believe in the words you are proclaiming, the activation is null and void. It is dead, and there is no creativity from it. Now, I know that this will basically shock a lot of people's thinking and where they are with this, but I want you to be clear on it because we have been walking in a way that says, I'm a preacher, I'm an evangelist, I'm a prophet, I'm a pastor, teacher, whatever. And we think that preaching is a calling. And because you're preaching, you think you were called. And because you are proclaiming, watch this, a teaching. Let me say it again. Preaching, if you take the PR off of preach, I should have had my board today with me and did this, but I don't. But if you take the PR off of proclaim and you take the T off of teaching, proclaiming a teaching. You take the PR off of proclaim, you take the T off of teaching, and you substitute the T with the PR from proclamation, and you got preaching. That's preaching kingdom style. You are proclaiming the teachings of Elohim. That means you are proclaiming the instructions of the Torah. Now, why is that such a significant thing? Now, when you realize that I can, in fact, sell you something I myself don't believe in. And so what if I on an item I don't believe in, yet I can sell it well? Now, can I mess up somebody who myself has come through the thing I'm about to tell you about, who has had all these years of degrees and have theology and ministry degrees? I've got all of that. There's nothing you're going to be able to, get upset about if I say this rightly, unless we just want to kick against the pricks here and kick against the goads here. So I want you to understand this. I want you to see this. There is a literal difference when you are proclaiming the teachings of the kingdom and you don't believe in it. And though you can sell it, there's a thing called the art of preaching. It's a real thing. There's an art of preaching, the charisma. You have to have a particular way of doing it, a genre in which you find faith within, you rock with it, you teach from it. But I want to give you something that Paul was trying to get us to understand, because many people right now in Christendom, many people right now within the quote unquote, well, they think they're in the body of Messiah. We a lot of times think everybody in church is in the body, and the body is literally in the church, right? The church is not the body. Paul was speaking specifically about the church of Ephesus. They are different than the churches in a sense that you and I participate in. The church of Ephesus is different from the church of Baptist, the church of Methodist, the church of Presbyterian, the church of Anglican, the church of Holiness, the church of Jesus only, the Church of God in Christ, Church of God, Church of God, Church of Christ. It's if the church of Ephesus is a little bit different than the churches you and I deal with. So Ephesus was really 100% about that life. Now, just because you preach that life, it is different than when you teach that life. See, preaching is proclaiming the teaching. And then there's a thing actually called teaching, which is where you're not just expounding on it with your verbiage, but you are also qualifying by verbiage the actions you're taking. So if we talk about what teaching is, let's get a definition for the word teaching. And I'm doing this right now while I have you online. Before we go right into what we do, teaching, again, using Oxford, is an occupation. It is a profession, watch this, or the work of a teacher. These are ideas and principles that are taught by what we deem to be an authority. Okay. Now, Messiah was the great ultimate teacher. Moshe was also a very dynamic teacher. Peter, James, John, they were teachers because in the large picture, they were proclaiming the teachings they got of Messiah. And so Messiah was showing them, teaching them. Remember, he didn't come to destroy the words that the priests were supposed to be proclaiming as the teachings of Elohim. Matthew, you'll remember him. I didn't come to destroy the Torah, nor the prophets who tried to remind you of the Torah. I came to show you, I came to fulfill it. I came to show you how to live it. See, that's teaching. Teaching not from just a verbal posture, not just a verbal perch, but teaching from, I'm going to show you how to live this. I'm going to live it with you. and then I'll explain it as we go. Preaching may or may not incorporate them verbally, physically walking out step by step how you succeed or how you fail in this faith. See, Paul did something very interesting to me. Paul wrote to Corinthians because Corinth was a church always being inundated with very religious people from the temple. Because Corinth was a port city. Being a port city, it was within Asia Minor, and you had a lot of merchants that would come in from Jerusalem and Judea and other most parts of that region. And when they would find, as Judaism, individuals who they knew were not of Israel, but they were now proclaiming Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkah, they were actively working within the Torah to promote the life of Elohim, but they believed in Yeshua HaMashiach. So they thought they were running the shady version of what Yeshua was teaching, because Jerusalem still had not believed that Yeshua was the Messiah in Paul's day. Now, Paul is in Ephesus letting them know, yes, it's a great thing you've accepted the Torah. It's a great thing you've accepted the days of the feast, the days of the Sabbaths. It's a good thing you've accepted Torah as a way of life. The kingdom of Elohim is in you by that word, and you're living that word so much that Ephesus, this is awesome. But Corinth was also trying to do it, and while they were doing it, those merchants coming to that port city made it difficult for those trying to convert to understand the war between Judaism and Yeshua. So Paul was like, listen, don't let people come in here and, pontificate to you about their religious view about the Torah. And he was talking about his own people. He was talking about those he had been in fellowship with and was literally contracted by to go after Yeshua. And he said, listen, when I leave y'all, don't let some other rabbi looking guy, some other pontificator who says, hey, you guys got a mezuzah on your house. Are you Israeli? No, but we believe in the Torah. Oh, what are you walking around with your talit for? Oh, we believe in Yeshua HaMashiach and the Torah. And they're like, well, here's what you need to know. And then they go on this pontification and they go on this proclaiming of their faith of Judaism using stanzas from the Torah. Now, see, if you've not actually understood the culture and how they intertwined from Asia Minor and Jerusalem and the merchants and how they communicated carrying the Torah and or the religion of Judaism abroad. They're not trying to establish Judaism, but when they would see that Yeshua, his life and his story made an impact on people who were not from Jerusalem, not from Judea, and now they are now coming into the knowledge of Torah, which was Israel's main function. That's what Israel was given Torah for, to help people understand Torah. By virtue of doing that, they now come back to the Creator. But what happened with Judaism and Israel was they began to form their own version of righteousness, which, by the way, when Yeshua shows up, they've disobeyed so badly that Israel has already been divided into two different nations, Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom. And in Judea, they have already renamed the faith and they've called it Judaism. Messiah didn't give them Torah to create Judaism. Nor did Yeshua come for you and I, before we get deep and think we're so special. Yeshua didn't come to be renamed Christ and thereby establish Christianity. So when you understand Paul and his reason for how he talked to Corinth, I'm going to show it to you in a second. What Paul does is he says, listen, don't let, once I've left y'all, and you are now understanding this, don't let other people who also live by Torah based on their temple faith, their temple religion, come and throw you off. Another place that many of you who are Christians, those of you who watch the Proceeding Word are typically Christians anyway, so you know about the Brit Hadessa, the New Testament. So you'll know the stories I will reference in this 1 hour long program. But I want you to know that we have to do them quickly as sound bites, but pay attention to what we say because you already know it. Just let your mind click it for you. So Paul, like in Corinth, is telling them, don't let people come in and change what I and maybe another apostle have left with you about Yeshua and the Torah and Elohim. Because there will be those who come in with their phylacteries. There will be those that come in with their mezuzahs. There will be those that come in with their talit. And they're going to tell you that, hey, you know, Yeshua is not that. And this is the Torah. And this is the true way of doing it. And they're going to confuse you because they're going to talk much of what we talked, but they will excuse Yeshua from the equation because they put him on the cross. And when you tell them that you know Yeshua, and this is how you've come into the Torah, they're going to tell you that's wrong. Don't let them do that to you because they're going to come preaching, proclaiming the teachings of Judaism. Now, I am not against, and this is not an anti-Semitic conversation. This is not about being anti-Semitic. This is not being anti-Udea or Jerusalem or anything. I love all bloodline of Israel. I love all things Jerusalem. Trust me. The issue is understanding the history of how we've gotten to the condition we're in today. Now, let me break this down so I can finish our subject matter on preaching does not make one righteous or saved. So when Paul in Corinth is telling the Corinthian, Asia Minor, Grecian society that, hey, we taught you, now I'm leaving, I got to go away. And then I'm hearing in letters that people have come in and started a little bit of a ruckus in your services, teaching you contrary to what we said, using the Torah, the same thing we got you established in. Now, I want you to understand, don't let them confuse you. So I didn't come to y'all with a whole bunch of education, though I'm well educated, Paul says. And he then lets us know that this was a common thing. So if you and I, who are modern day Christians, did not live through the scenarios of those days and don't even understand the culture of that day, you will not understand why Paul did that in Corinth. And then he said in Galatia, "O Galatians, who has bewitched you that you should not believe what I left you to believe?" I'm paraphrasing. But who has bewitched you that you should believe a lie rather than this truth? And that goes to show you that he did the same thing in Galatia. They believed and accepted Yeshua HaMashiach as the veil to Elohim. They learned Torah, teaching Torah, they're living Torah. And then some Judaism, some temple worship, some other Torah type of keeping entity came and said, you're doing it wrong. And Paul's like, Galatia, hey, who has bewitched you? I left you. You were doing really good. What has come and taken your mind off of what I left in your mind? About Torah, about Elohim, about his kingdom. Are we making sense to you guys? You can talk to me if you're out there in Clubhouse. I want to make sure we get this. So all of this is keen and significant. And so Paul was telling them, and I'm trying to make this point to you guys in 3 witnesses. I've used Ephesus, I've used Corinthians, I can also use Colossae, and I've used Galatia to let you know that Paul was telling them, do not let anybody come selling you their way of Torah, proclaiming their version of these teachings. I hope this is making sense to you. So when you see people coming in, he says, and though they're doing these different things, you know what? Let me let Paul tell it to you. Let's just go here real quick. So I gave you a definition for preaching. I gave you the definition for teaching, and they are different. However, preaching incorporates teaching, but it is incorporating it in a certain tense. So when you proclaim the teachings of something, it doesn't mean you believe that teaching. It doesn't mean you actually observe that teaching. See, because I can teach you 2 other faith systems that I know the whole core and the whole construct of their religion, and I can teach it to you. And I could actually help anybody in that faith understand that faith very much, probably help them along better in their faith quest. But I don't believe that faith, and I can teach it all day. But I don't believe that faith. I can teach, someone can teach or proclaim or preach rather about this, that, or the other and not be themselves a participant. And whether you want to believe that or not, I can teach you and proclaim to you a whole nother world that I've been a part of and now am convicted of, that it is not pleasing to the Father. And I do everything I can do not to go back into that world. And I can tell you everything you need to know about that world up to date. And you hear it, receive it, and you go out and try to do it. I'm not going to do it. But since you paid me to tell you how to do it, I'll tell you this is what they teach. This is what it's about. This is the verbiage on it. You can go and find it over here and do this and say that, and that's what it is. But I might not be living it because I really don't want to live it. But if I can make a living telling you about it, nobody will know the difference, because when you talk to me, if I'm always giving you information about why you came to me, then you would think by the accuracy of what I share with you, you would think I'm living it.
Wow.
Is that the only person that's going to say wow? Many of us got married because of that. That should make a wow. That should go, oh, shoot. Yeah, you should be upset now. We call it a double life. Now, is it right? Is it wrong? It's a part of what we're talking about. So what we want you to understand is that if you, just because someone is preaching, it does not mean one is righteous themselves. And just because you're a preacher, it doesn't mean you yourself is right, right? However, that is the hope. We would hope that what we're living and what we're saying is what we're living. We would hope that we're not out here, as they said in the 80s, perpetrating a fraud. Well, still a legal phrase, but it was a popular phrase in the streets where I came from in that day. You know, you perpetrating a fraud, you know. And many people get caught up in preaching. So why am I pushing this today on the Proceeding Word broadcast? Because I'm finding that as we who say we love Elohim, and we who are saying that we are in the faith, and we who are saying we are of the faith, that we know what we're preaching makes us righteous. What we're preaching has the ability to make anyone who receives it and observes it righteous in the sight of Elohim. But many people preach and don't do it. That's why Devarim 28 verses 1 and verse 15 tell you, if you hearken diligently unto the word of Elohim, the Torah, to observe it, take it down, suck it in, embrace it, drink it down, you know, get it in your system, and then do it. So the observing of it doesn't make you righteous. The drinking in of it doesn't make you righteous. The hearing of it, the reading of it doesn't make you righteous. It has the potential, if you will observe it, to do it. And if you will do what you've taken in. That's why David made a statement, and y'all playing with it if you want to, talking about if you really save, you ain't going to sin. You need to sit down and listen. Mr. and Mrs. I'm so righteous. Because Paul and David made this statement, and I'm not advocating sin. I just want people to stop being silly about this faith of the Holy Writ, the Torah, being our salvation. It is, but you have to live it. You can't just read it and spout it out. You got to spout it by walking it out. And many people are silly because they think, well, I'm around the world preaching salvation, I'm surely going to be saved. No, you won't be, because you can actually spout the Torah, remember it. I used to know a man, literally a man who's world known. I forget his name actually, but he would come to our church all the time. He was one of those guys who literally just say the word, say the verse. He could quote it back and forth. It didn't matter where you said it from. He could quote the Bible from chapter and verse. I mean, it book, chapter, and verse, literally on demand, on command. He was just that way. But if you're not living it, you can proclaim that teaching of the Bible and not live that teaching of the Bible. You can proclaim it with proper memory. And if you don't do what you've observed, if you're just spouting what you've observed, if you're just proclaiming what you have observed and you're not doing what you have observed, you're not saved. You know how to be saved, but you're not saved. Here's why. When everyone stands before the Father, Messiah made this phraseology, and I do paraphrase here on purpose, is because I don't have a whole bunch of time to go to it. And I paraphrase only to this group because you know exactly what I'm saying and where it is, you can find it. But when Messiah makes the statement and he says, you'll stand before the Father and he will say, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. So in this context, when we stand before the Father in the last days of our life, when our life has now been taken from this form of body we're in, and we are now to be absent from this body to be present with the Creator. Once we become present with the Creator, watch this, he's going to ask us the question, what did we do? Not what did we say? What did we do with his word? What did we do with his son, Adonai? He sent into this world, John 3:16, 17. What did we do with the word, John 1:1? What did we do with his word while we were in the earth? And we can say, oh, we told everybody about Jesus. We told everybody about Yeshua. We told everybody about the feasts. We told everybody about the Sabbath. We told everybody about your word. And he can still turn to that person and say, okay, depart from me. Well, why? I went around telling everybody your word, but you didn't work it. You talked it. So technically, would that be the new word for twerk? Talking and not working? So you twerk. Okay, never mind. Come on, y'all. It's Wednesday. I'm trying to make y'all laugh. So you talked the word, but you didn't work the word. This is what he says. Depart from me. Can y'all finish that? Can anybody, can I get 5 people to come off mic and finish this phrase with me when I say it and let it sink in? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Depart from me, you. Hold on. When I stop, y'all finish it. Ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Depart from me, you. Talkers of iniquity. Workers. Do you know you can talk iniquity and be saved if you are working righteousness? I just heard the Christian right now just get so indignant with me right there. I saw your tomato and your salt and your knife. Oh, watch the butcher knife now. Be nice. Do a dagger. Don't throw butcher knives. That's not fair. What is he talking about? You can talk the world, but work righteousness within the world, and that is your salvation. You can talk iniquity. I don't suggest it. I don't recommend it unless you are mature enough to know how to handle it so that you're using the talk of iniquity to help those in iniquity understand why iniquity is not good for them, and then help bring them over by answering their questions because you are well versed in iniquity, but you are working righteousness. But let me tell you something. You can't talk righteousness and work iniquity and expect to be saved. Now, let me ask you a question, just for the sake of understanding. If you know culture, when in fact did Yeshua with Messiah? I don't know who you are, Rocktober Slots. Good to have you. I don't know if you're female or male, but Rocktober Slots. So good to have you. You're correct. You and I don't disagree that you taking Messiah out, you're nothing. Messiah is the word of Elohim. And if you outside of his word, yeah, you're out of him, right? You're nothing. You got to keep Messiah in it. There's no way out of that. So we don't disagree. All right. Just FYI. You might not know me, or maybe you've never watched our programs, but you're not off, and you and I are not at odds about that. So just know you're in good company. But we try to break this down so that we can understand it almost like trying to attempt a cellular level. So just keep your thoughts and questions coming. We love them. So everybody else, I want you to understand this, that you can talk the talk. And we've always said it in the hood. And no, Rocktober. Okay, first off, bro, sis, Rocktober, we're not calling you a kid. It's not what we're calling. But we do teach the gospel so that even a child can understand it. And we're not, no, I don't know who you are. So we're not going to go back and forth with that. But you're more than welcome to drop chats and everything. I'm so glad you're here, man. Real talk. Rocktober Slots. All right. This ain't about what you got. And that's the thing we're trying to actually talk about. We shouldn't have to puff up our chests just to prove our point, when what we're trying to make sure is that we understand the whole biblical point. And that's just conversation, not competition or combativeness. We don't do that here on this platform. So the point to the conversation that we're giving you right now in this this monologue is understanding that Messiah was very clear. He said, I came to show you how to live the words the priests have been telling you. Because the priests who were telling you the word, all of them weren't living the word, right? We have that same issue and problem today. And I can tell you right now, I myself was victim of that. And what people don't understand is that because someone told you that, once saved, always saved, that is a terrible hat to lay your laurels on, a terrible post to lay your hat on, right? Because if you do iniquity, you are in iniquity. To no longer be in an iniquified state, that's my word. Don't nobody steal it. I'm gonna make a dictionary of all my phrases that I think are important. So if you are doing iniquity, then you're living in iniquity. And if you're living in iniquity, you're not living in the kingdom. And if you're not living in the kingdom, when he comes back to take your life, then you have worked iniquity. And that's what he saw. And that's your record. So once saved, always saved is not a true thing. And you can only be saved through the veil of the flesh that Yahweh sent his son into the world. In the beginning was the word was with, the word was, and the word became flesh. That flesh veil, that bloody flesh veil of Yeshua HaMashiach, our access to Elohim's glory and grace by that place of glory, gives us the grace to walk in this world and follow his demonstration on how he resisted in his physical human state the ways of unrightness, because he adhered to the word of righteousness in him, which is every man's struggle. And Paul tried to tell you, I find inside of me, though I preach the gospel, watch this, a war in my members. And Paul is telling you constantly in Corinthians, he's like, listen, I have to, and I think it's 13, I have to pull, or 10, I have to pull every imagination and every thought that comes into my physical mind. I got to make sure that every imagination is pulled down into the obedience, under the obedience of the word of Elohim that I know and I now proclaim. And not everybody proclaiming these teachings are observing and doing those teachings. And if you tell it, sell it, from the mountaintops and not walk it down the mountainside, that's not salvation. That's a proclamation. But in order for you or for me to be born again, we have to live what we're preaching. And I'm going to tell you right now, I need his grace every single day. And I'm so grateful for it. And we get people who will hear certain things, and because you've been preached the Bible and you've read the Bible and you've had someone beat us down with the Bible, that the reality is you've already sinned. You were born in a world of sin. Sin is not something that we are advocating on this platform. However, there are a group of people that I'm constantly trying to help understand. Evil and good are always present. Whether you are sinning, good is present. Whether you are doing good, evil is present. Whether you make your bed in hell, Elohim is present. And whether you fly to the throne room of Elohim, evil is also present. Well, what do you mean, Apostle? Flat out, the book of Job, Satan, suckered by evil, is sitting in the throne room of Elohim with all the angels going up to see the Father on a regular basis. He's like, hey, what you doing up here, Satan? Well, I'm bored. I'm out of work. Okay, good. I got a job for you. Isn't that in the throne room of Elohim? Isn't that the heavens? Think about it before you try to come against it. Isn't that the throne of Elohim where Satan approached with the other angels going to get their daily job assignments? See, angels are servants to them that are heirs of salvation. So you have angels who have a job to head you in, to prod you in righteousness. And you have angels right now working on your behalf this very moment if you're in the Father. They're working on your behalf, and they, like Jacob told you, like Jacob showed you in the book of Bereshit, they're ascending and descending. They're on shift work, covering your life 24 hours in a Gregorian calendar day, 24 hours in an Elohim created day. So there are angels who are taking shift work, their tier systems, their staggered schedules on your behalf, thousands of them. So when he gets the story we hear in Job, Yahweh looks up and here's Satan, an ex-angel of his court, saying, what you doing up here? I kicked you out. Yeah, but I'm bored. I ain't got nothing to do. Okay, I got a job for you. Yahweh's an equal opportunity employer. He hates his enemy. Pardon me. He loves the enemy that says it hates him. I said that wrong, so I don't want y'all to get me misquoted. So when you understand that you're in the righteousness of Elohim, and Satan is right there at his feet, asking for an assignment. Hit different, don't it? Now watch. David cried and said, if I take the wings of the morning and fly anywhere, if I make my bed in hell, the epitome of evildoers' resting spot until the lake of fire opens up. If I take my bed and if I make my bed in hell, you good Elohim are there. Right? So they're present. You are not in a state where you are always walking in the circumference and the sphere of goodness and be absent from the presence of evil. You have to choose to do the good. Or if you don't choose to do the good, you're actually choosing to do the evil. See, this is where, because you preach and you scream and you yell, Jesus, 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 don't mean you saved. You need to do what Jesus did. Jesus did. Jesus did. He chose righteousness. Nevertheless, Father, of the two wills at present, let your will be done. I choose your will over my will. I choose this day who I'm going to serve. Y'all getting what I'm trying to tell you? Because we got this Pharisaical mindset that we just preach Jesus and we just preach Yeshua and we just preach the Torah and we saved. You're not. You got to do it. It's cool. You can talk about it. It's great. You can explain it. It's awesome. You can get people to click in their mind a mystery that has had them boggled for literally decades. And they're like, oh, now I get it. But if you can help them get it, but you're not living it, you help them get it, but you still got to live it. And if you ain't living it and they do, because you taught it, they'll be the ones going on to glory. They'll be the one kept in the rapture train. And you'll be like, well, I taught them. Why can't I go? Because all you did was teach them. All you did was preach to them. You didn't show them. You didn't live it. Well, I explained it, but did you live it? Did you make the choice you told them they got to make in order to get to heaven? Oh, well, I should get some credit because I'm the preacher. Elohim don't see it that way. And you're not once saved, always saved. And so now we got this thing where we got preachers who ain't made it to heaven yet, sitting in the earth telling you, you know, you can't lose with the stuff I use. Stealing a quote from a person of all of our histories past. I'm doing that in pun and in jest, but. You can't lose if you use the word. But remember, y'all, can y'all type this in? You must choose this day who you're going to serve. You must choose. Just type it in. We'll know what it means. You must choose. And when you say, well, you got to choose this day, that's not one day. That's every day. Every day you wake up, you must choose to live the Torah. Because if you choose not to live the Torah, then who you living for? Well, I chose to live the Torah 5 months ago. I didn't choose it today. And today I chose. You must choose every day. Preaching the gospel because you got called to come and teach at a convention, because you got called to teach at a different space, doesn't mean you yourself are doing what you're teaching. I know, because I've been in that boat more times than I, who love Elohim and want to make heaven my home and desire to hear him say, well done, my good and faithful servant, I have not more times than I care to admit. Well, that's on you with your unrighteous behind. You judge me, you're in the same boat. The fact that you did that, you're in the same boat. That's sin in itself. Well, I ain't judging you. The word judge you. The word does judge me. And you can bring the word to me and judge me. But when you judge me because you're bothered by that, that's not righteous indignation. That's your indignation. And righteous indignation has an element called compassion. Because he didn't send the word into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through the word you bring might now be saved. So when you come at me and say, well, you wrong for that, and you unrighteous behind, and and you ain't got no compassion to say that, listen, here's what the word says, and you can be saved. Here's what the word said, and mercy can be yours. Here's what the word says, and grace can be your sufficiency. When you don't come like that, you're coming in your indignation, not righteous indignation. Therefore, you, Mr. Righteous, Mrs. Righteous, is in sin towards another person who Yahweh said, don't kill him. I would that all come to repentance. You didn't help that process, preacher. So Paul, as I leave this point, let's go to the book of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 2. Let's look at what Paul is talking about here. Remember when I told you initially what Paul is talking about. He is talking to Corinthians who are like you and I today, right? They are people who were not born in Israel. They were not born of the bloodline of Israel, and they have yet converted to the knowledge of Yeshua HaMashiach and the working of the Torah. So what's Paul saying in 1 Corinthians? He says, listen, and I, brethren, when I came to you, listen to what he says. He says, when I came to you, brethren, I did not come with excellency of speech. Now, the irony here is that Paul is so educated. Paul is the only disciple that can, I'll say, cross-pollinate. He is the only disciple who has the education system to be like a Grecian who is a thinking man. That's what you got to know about the Greeks. That thinking man statue, that's where that comes from. The thinking man, that's what they do. When you got your great historians that you guys know about and all those names, these are the thinking men of Greece, because they think they know it all, and they do. They are noted for their thinking, and they have come up with some concepts and ideals. Rome and Greece, Roman Greco, great era of education. All right. So Paul is like, you guys have thought so much. You know all these demigods. There's a hill called Mars. You know all these gods you've made a plaque for, but you don't know the big God, which you got that big plaque for, but there's no name on it. So these people think Paul is the only apostle who of other nations could stand in front of them without the Holy Spirit and gain their respect about what he knows about their culture. All the other apostles only knew whatever happened in Torah, only knew whatever happened in Jerusalem, and they weren't trying to hear nothing else. Paul was well educated. He was a global mind, right? So Paul, this is why he's the one capable of writing 2/3 of the New Testament. That's why he's the one that's going out to all these different countries in Asia Minor, because he has some idea. So here's the catch. Paul says, and the irony of him saying, I don't come to you with excellency of speech, he first has to know what excellency of speech is in order to tell you I'm not coming with it, because I know it needs to be basic. Now, I know this is a preceding word. It's not a Bible study where we get that deep, but understand this truth. So what he says in Facebook, I need y'all to drop some, y'all not dropping nothing in Facebook, in the threads, YouTube. Y'all can type. It's okay. Make your comments, type. All right. So watch what he says, because there's something we have to look at here. He says, I don't come to you with excellency of speech. Look at it. Verse number 1. He says, I don't come to you with excellency of speech, nor do I come with wisdom, declaring unto you the testimony of Elohim. What he's saying is, I didn't come to y'all preaching. Watch. He says, for I determined not to know anything of you, anything among you, save what you knew about Yeshua HaMashiach and him being crucified. You never read it that way, did you? Watch. Verse 2, for I determined not to know anything among you save Yeshua HaMashiach and him crucified. Verse 3, and I was with you in weakness. What? I was with you in fear. What? I was with you in much trembling. What is he saying? He didn't come preaching. He came because you asked him to come and help y'all understand Torah better, because you're a new established institution of the faith. The apostles sent me to come and set up what you already have established in the order of the word. So I came not preaching, I came to see what you knew so I can help stabilize you. Oh my goodness. See, that's the benefit of having gone through school for theology as many times as I did, and then in another faith system, because we've been taking things for granted because we think we know it all. So Paul is telling you, I didn't come trying to convince y'all. You already have been convicted, converted. You asked us to come to make sure you're doing it in order. So I don't come to sell you anything. I come to see what you know about our Savior and why he was crucified. I'm not going to move on till y'all say, whoa, I'm not hitting the cricket bucket. I'm not hitting the cricket button. Okay, I guess I guess I got to hit the cricket button. See, I'm trying not to hit the cricket button, y'all. Look at what he said. Look at the verse. Look at what he said. Watch. He says, I didn't come, verse 1, Paul, to the Corinthians church. Notice this is 1 Corinthians chapter 2. This isn't 2 Corinthians when he's come and gone. He is here now. He says, listen, guys, I did not come to preach to y'all. I did not come to bring down all the great things I've learned in theology, excellent speech, and the wisdom of God's testimony. He says, I came. Y'all asked for us to come and help y'all. So I'm here. And see what this does is this does away with this myth that the apostles go around establishing churches or starting churches. That's not what an apostle does. An apostle goes and establishes order in the already existing church by the edict of the Torah. That's what an apostle is supposed to do. That's what's supposed to be the apostolic faith, not planting churches. You're not an apostle because you built and started 3 churches, 2 churches. You're an apostle because when asked how to establish order in it, you were that sage of the writ. You were the one who could, you are of those who can establish the order per the Torah, rightly dividing the word of truth to those who are trying to do it right. That's an apostle. The word apostle is better known in the English. A better translation for you would be a sage. So now let's watch this. I have no support here today. I don't know why, but I'm gonna keep moving without it. Listen, he goes on to make this statement. Here's your Bible again. The author Grice, that's a good way of putting it. The author Grice makes the statement, the point. We have to live the word more so than tell it. And the best way, that's well said, brother. And the best way to tell the word is by living it. You tell me in your actions better than with your words. Because if your breath stink, I'm not going to want to listen to you, you know, or if you got a monotone voice sometimes, or if you can I have some fun, y'all not gonna say, wow, at least maybe you'll laugh and say, ha, ha, ha. So here's the catch. You know, you telling me with hellacious breath and halitosisness, I'm not really going to hear you because that green fog coming out your lungs is killing me. You know, and whatever that scent is coming off that back tooth with that feeling you should have got filled a long time ago is I can't hear you. I can't hear you. You can't see me. I can't hear you. But if you're walking it and you're not talking it, your walk translates into a conversation. That's why Paul says, mark them that walk upright in front of you. Ooh. He didn't say talk. He said, mark them that walk upright. That's the communication, the ones that are doing what the writ said. And that's why Messiah, when the Pharisees tried to put him on the cross, they did, but they tried. He said, listen, if you won't believe me for the words I've said, believe me for the work I said. And the work I did came from the word I'm trying to tell you about. So at the end of the day, the author's point is very, very clear. We need to live the word more than tell the word. And living the word is the actual charge. Remember, some of y'all might not understand this from the Baptist world, but if I got any Baptist folk out there, maybe even Methodists, so they did it too. It was just on the low, right? I used to call the song the Ray Charles song. That's because I thought it was Ray Charles. Ray Charles, but it was a charge to keep I have and a God to glorify. A charge to keep I have. And Elohim, if I keep it, will be glorified. That's why Messiah says, if you do the works of Elohim, men will see your good works and glorify our Father. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So David tried to tell y'all, he's like, listen, thy word, Elohim, I'm hiding in my heart that y'all don't like this. Y'all, some don't like to hear this. Thy word have I hid that I might not sin against you. What? That's King David. Y'all know that guy y'all called a murderer and a rapist and all that. Y'all listen to King David before you listen to men who struggle like David in modern day. You know, Peter, the liar who denied Messiah 3 times and then did some other devious stuff and tried to cut a man's ear off and did assault with a deadly weapon. And somehow he beat that charge. And y'all listen to him before you listen to the other brethren today who are struggling just like they are. Y'all, it's amazing to me how we preach the gospel, because what happens is, and this is what I told y'all in my thing, and I'm hoping that I can put this up on the board tonight and everybody sort of kind of take it and look at it and really think about what it says, rather than, because some of y'all don't really like me. You just listen because I tell some truths. You might not like how I tell it, but you can't deny it, because once you heard it, it's going to stick with you and it's going to ring in your head for weeks and months until you actually come back and say, shoot, it was right. Not him. The word he gave us and showed us 2 or 3 times over was right. I don't like him. I don't like the way he presents it. But here's what I want y'all to get. Preaching forces one to talk a good game. Yet you must be aware it never guarantees that the one preaching or the one receiving the preaching will live for the righteous gain of the word. Usually when people preach, usually, not all the time, but more than not, it's so that they can be liked by a group, liked by a community, liked enough to be given an offering, tell them what they want to hear, because you only preach as preachers in this modern version of this faith in Messiah. We're preaching what people want to hear that can go viral. We're preaching for sound bites and clips and reels and likes. We're not teaching and preaching for the life. We're doing it for likes. And like I'm telling you, we don't do this for likes. We do this and we teach this for kingdom life. Now, if you're looking on the screen, you're seeing what we're saying, but look at what also is here, because let's talk about defining preaching and the teaching. And teaching is usually done by a demonstration, and it's also followed up by words. Teaching is done by a demonstration, and then in the demonstration, those who the demonstration's playing out in front of asks the questions and says, how did you not fall? How did you fall and get up? How did you do this? How did you do that? Because some people I hear think that you can walk this walk in faith and not have to choose every step of the way. And the fact that you feel so entitled to thinking you don't have to choose because you made a choice on Sunday, that whatever happens to you on Thursday, you don't have to choose again, you are fooling yourself. And that is literally not the truth. You have to choose every day. Every day I look at somebody on the road. People think that when we say you sin every day, and I heard one person talking about I don't sin. I don't sin. The way you preaching right now, you sinning. Because you're lying. You do sin. Oh, you don't sin based on the socially accepted hierarchy or list of sins that they think are the only sins. No. Judging is a sin. gossiping about how somebody taught the gospel and you didn't like the way they taught the gospel, instead of going back and studying it the way that they were teaching the gospel to find out, you can have a conversation about what they see and their perspective on it, and saying it's dead wrong, they're wrong, get away from it, never check with them, never went with them. That's a sin, because you got to dwell in unity in order for Elohim to come down. So if you are propagating division, that's a sin. So if you really want me to break this down, all of Christendom, based on its division, is in sin. How dare you turn that man off? He's crazy. Okay. I'm real curious how this conversation plays out with the Father once we get into heaven. I'm really curious. Now, I'm not telling y'all that, oh, you're trying to call us all sinners. What I'm saying is, before you go off talking about you don't sin, first understand what is all incorporated in sin. What all incorporates sin? Looking at somebody to lust after them, that's sin. Judging somebody because you don't like them for reasons you don't even know, you just don't like them, that's sin. Murmuring and complaining, that's sin. Elohim came down and dealt with Miriam because she murmured and complained. He literally sent an intelligent earthquake to annihilate half of Israel he just brought out of Egypt because of their murmuring and complaining. It's sin. But you think sin is, drunkenness and idolatry and adultery and fornication. I don't sin. I don't do those 4 sins. Well, it's 10 commandments. So I guess you 6 short, aren't you? At least, because there's 613 total. Well, I don't sin. The fact that you judging that brother or that sister teaching the gospel as they've gotten revelation, instead of coming along and supporting them and saying, hey, you know what? You could probably say this better and reach my group of people. Because now I get what you're saying. I didn't see it at first because the way the Baptists taught me. I didn't see it at first because the way the Church of God in Christ taught me. I didn't see it at first because the way the Wesleyans taught me. I didn't see it at first because the way the Lutherans taught me. But now, you know what? Now that I go back over the word you gave, and I see it now in 2 other places in the Bible, and I'm seeing that Messiah did it, and I'm seeing that Paul did it, and Moshe did it, and look at Elijah. Oh my goodness, I never saw it that way because of my preferred denominational doctrine. Preaching don't make you saved. Because you preach your preference doesn't mean you're righteous. That's why Elohim wants us to be humble. That's why I can sit down and listen and type and talk and reach and study with anybody across any aisle, because I just want to know Elohim better and greater. And I also get to know me better. I also find out every Sabbath how, though I'm not doing these 4 sins that everybody thinks are the only sins, right? I'm realizing that I'm not up to par. I'm like Isaiah. I'm like Ezekiel. Oh, my righteousness is but as filthy rags. But what gets me is when people start judging other people who want to be right, but may have fallen from grace. And then you say, oh, they hurt me because they fell. They hurt you because they fell. They hurt you because they were preaching to you. And because they were preaching to you the Torah, you got hurt because they fell. How that work? So right now, I just smacked my hand on the, I just insulted my own body. Did you get hurt? Did you feel that? I do. God, don't it? I be trying too hard to give y'all these things so y'all can feel it, but y'all not really gonna feel that. That hurt me. Shoot. Nobody want to have fun with that? You don't like that, do you? But when you break it down, what are we really saying? You didn't feel my pain. You didn't. You may have had an image in your mind because of what they were preaching. And if you're not careful, you make those people preaching your God and your example of righteousness. And you can mark them that walk upright. But let me assure you, all have sinned. And it's not that all out here being lewd, all out here being wilding out. It's just that all have sinned. You can have a moment where you, as a pastor, snap on your wife, snap on your husband. You become wrathful, enraged, and angered. Have a mad blowout argument in the car and get up on that pulpit and preach like nothing ever happened in the car. You're in sin. Why? Because I got to get it right with my brother before I go and carry my gift to the altar. Otherwise, I got to leave my gift on the altar and go be reconciled with my brother. Your wife, your husband is your brother in the faith if y'all came to that church together. You see how we don't open that up to understand what that is? Well, I ain't got it. He always being deep. I'm willing to go and die before what I'm teaching takes root in the hearts and minds of real kingdom believers who are tired of church, who are tired of this shallow horse feed. I'm willing that should the rapture delay and Messiah delay his coming, I'm willing to die and be dead until what I've been teaching these decades takes roots in somebody's life. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh or Elohim. All right, I got to get this passage done. We're in 1 Corinthians chapter number 2. 1 Corinthians chapter number 2. Are y'all learning anything? Facebook, y'all not chatting with me. I need y'all to help me with those algorithms out there, Facebook. Can y'all chat with me? Well, don't force it. I don't want to force it. YouTube, you can make your chops as well. Clubhouse, you can as well. Any questions, moderators, let me know if you see questions somewhere out there and I can address them. But now I want to read this to you. 1 Corinthians chapter 2. Watch. 1 Corinthians chapter 2. And again, brethren, I came to you without preaching, without excellency of speech, without wisdom, declaring unto you the testimonies of Elohim. That's what he's saying, not that he didn't have them. Verse 2 says, for I determined, I made it my business when I got here, because y'all asked me to come. I made it my business not to tell y'all what I knew, verse 2, but to know what you knew about Yeshua HaMashiach and him crucified. Somebody say that read different. That hit different. Somebody say that reads different. Oh my goodness.
That reads different.
I guess only Jeanette, only your microphone must be. Is that Lindo speaking? It must be. Lindo, only your mic is working. Father, I pray over every microphone on Clubhouse right now. You release them in the name of Jesus. Loose their microphones now. Okay. All right.
No.
Only yours is working. I don't know what's going on. But all right, listen. So he says, I'm having fun, y'all. It's Wednesday. Get over the hump. Come on. Verse 2 says, for look at what Paul says. Paul says, I am determined not to know anything among you except I don't want to know who your family is. I ain't trying to make friends with y'all. I'm not in this church. I don't come to this church to make friends with you, to know how many grandbabies you got. That ain't my business. Yes, we are a commonwealth, but my business is to only be concerned when it comes to you outside of my family about how you and I serve Messiah together. I'm determined not to know anything about you, anything among you, except for how you understand Yeshua HaMashiach and him crucified. Verse 3 says, and I was with you in my weakness. I was with you in fear. I was with you in much trembling. And my speech and my preaching was not with enticing words of man's wisdoms, but in what, y'all? What's that word? But in, what's that word? But in demonstration. I must be the only one with a Bible. But I told you, y'all can see my Bible online. But he says listen, he says, my speech and my preach was not with enticing words of man's wisdoms, just like he said in verse 1, didn't come with excellency of speech, wisdom, declaring testimonies of Elohim. My words, verse 4, were not with enticing words of man's wisdoms, but I came in demonstration. Do y'all see he came walking this out, not talking this out? Somebody please tell me this hitting different. No, you don't have to. Yahweh already let me know it is. He says, my speech, verse 4, my speech and my preaching was not with enticing words of man's wisdoms in demonstration, but it was in demonstration of the Spirit and of his power. Why? Verse 5, that your faith should not stand in the wisdom of men. And that's what, I'm sorry, many of your sermons, they're standing in the wisdom of men, sprinkled, having some biblical flex from the Torah, from the Bible, but it's basically man's wisdom, justifying it with the Bible. Verse 5 says that your faith should not stand in the wisdom of men, but in the power of Elohim. Verse 6, here's why we're here. Howbeit, we speak wisdom among them that are perfect, yet not the wisdom of this world, nor the princes of this world that come to naught. Now, Zion, I need us to really understand and embrace this as best we know how. So when we read this, everything that we do, it's not about preaching, it's about demonstration. And guess what? To make something and to demonstrate something means you got to be committed to the idea of it. So you've observed it, and now you're in the lab trying to put it together. How many of you who have ever worked in a laboratory, you get the idea, whether it's in biology or chem class or statistics, whatever class, and you're in your lab, whatever type of lab it is, you get the idea in your head, but you're trying to make it manifest in the natural. Every day you're in a laboratory trying to get the ideal of righteousness to manifest in your person, in the situation with this person, in the situation with this person, in the situation with this issue, in the situation with this diagnosis, in the situation with this financial thing, in the situation with this relationship with your neighbor. Every day you're in that lab. But you got to remember the idea that got you in the lab and trying to make it demonstrate. Sometimes you put too much of the wrong chemical, or put too much of the right chemical in what you're doing, it explodes or it breaks down, or it loses its viscosity. You can't use that now. You got to start over again, and you go back to scratch. Do you realize that's you failing? But you don't stop in that lab, because you still got to get the test. You still got to pass the test. I'm not trying to tell y'all it's okay failing. I'm trying to show you practically what victory looks like. How many people have you known in your laboratory with you, in your class with you, that just give up and stop coming to school? Man, I can't do that. It's too hard. I ain't doing that. I don't want. I can't do it. And you wish you could help them if they would ask. You'd show them what you know. But I mean, I messed up too. I got egg on my face. I got acid shot up in my hair. Oh man, thank God I didn't mess my skin up. But I mean, I'm still gonna try and get it. I get it in my head. I see the equations. I got to find out what the right amounts are. I'm gonna get it. I'm determined to get it because if I get it, it can change the world. It can change my world. You got to work the word. You can't just talk it. There are a lot of people talking science, and they don't really have the success of demonstrated science. There are so many people talking in theory, this should work. You got a lot of people preaching theory about kingdom success. Truth be told, they've not persevered through to get to that point where the theory has been proven and leaving us empirical data for success. One other place in Colossians, so you guys don't think I'm just leaving stuff out here trying to be deep. Colossians chapter number 2, verse 4. Verse 1 says, watch this. This is not Colossians. For I would that you knew what great conflict I have for you. Paul talking to Colossae now, not Corinth. For them that are at Laodicea, and for as many as have not seen my face, though they've heard about my reputation, but they've not seen my face in the flesh, that their hearts might be comforted and be knit together in love, and unto all the riches of the full assurance of understanding, to the acknowledgement of the mysteries of Elohim and of Yahweh and of Adonai in Mashiach. Verse 3, in whom, Messiah, are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Verse 4, and this I say, lest any man should beguile you, with enticing words. For though I be absent from you in the flesh, yet if you're in the word I gave you, I'm with you in the spirit, strengthening, joying, and beholding your order. Where do you get order from? The instructions you're following. And the steadfastness. What do you stick fast to? The instructions you have of your faith. Faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of Elohim. Your faith in Adonai, the Mashiach. As you have therefore received Yeshua HaMashiach, Adonai in flesh, walk ye in him. Be rooted and built up. Verse 5, for though I be absent in the flesh, yet I'm with you in spirit, beholding your order and steadfastness of your faith in Messiah. As you have therefore received Messiah, Adonai, walk ye in him. Verse 7, rooted and built up in him, established in the faith as you have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after the Torah that I left you with, not after the storyline and the proofing of Messiah. For in Messiah dwells all the fullness of the Godhead embodied. And you are complete in the word, in him, which is the head of all principality and power. I don't think I should have brought this deep of a conversation to y'all while y'all at work, because you're not able to sit and watch your Bibles. But I hope y'all will rewind this and watch it again in the comfort of your own home with your own Bibles. I gave you about an hour and 20 minutes worth of teaching, and I can go on about this for a long time. But the reason I did this was because I'm tired of seeing people who are so wrapped around the fact that they are preaching that they think because they're preaching that they are righteous. It's a good thing to preach the good news of Elohim. I want everyone to do that. But don't get to the point where you feel so emboldened that if you're making others think you're so righteous that you don't sin. I don't want to see you fall. I fell enough for all of us. You don't need to fall. You don't need to fall from grace by thinking you got this figured out. Because each day, if you're so strong today, well, the enemy of faith is going to attack you at that level of your faith you're so strong in. And you're not wrestling against the person. You're not wrestling against the people who left you, the people who talked about you, the people who dogged you, the people who attacked you. You're not wrestling against flesh and blood. You're wrestling against principalities and powers, and they got all they need. The element is where you are in your faith is how you get, in fact, approached by those principalities. Don't ever think you got it. You got him. What you should be worried about is, am I in you, Yahweh? Your word said, don't do this. I'm going to try. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do what your words say. And y'all need to understand, you got to choose that every day. And sometimes you're going to be tempted to just feel like being willy-nilly. Sometimes you're going to be tempted to just, I feel like I should be, I feel justified. And what am I doing? Stop acting like you're so holy. Because when you're working in this earthen realm, you have to demonstrate to him how his word works in the life. And I don't always hit the mark. No, I didn't say I do egregious stuff. I'm talking about I judge. I can murmur. I can sometimes go into a little small state of depression until the light brings me out. All of that is not trusting him. So before you say, I don't sin, and you preaching so hard like you so, I call it damned righteous. You're damned righteous because you so right in your thoughts, you're going to cause yourself damnation because you're far away from his. That's what Paul talked about. We have a form of righteousness, but a lot of times we deny the power of that righteousness. All right, there is absolutely no chatter on any of these blocks, so I'm assuming that I've bored y'all to death. Maybe my breath stinks, and I know y'all can't smell it, but that must be the case. So I'm gonna let y'all go and do what you guys need to do, and I hope that you had some sense of edification. Father, we thank you for the word, the will, and plan. We're asking you that the things that have been spoken, that what has been done in truth would rest in their hearts. Anything done in error of your writ, I pray you strike it from their minds right now. In the mighty name of Yeshua HaMashiach, grace me with the abilities, Father, to be able to help your people learn you, understand you, and teach, not just preach, by walking in my own life and they walking in their lives, the things that are necessary for you to be glorified in the earth. Help us to obey you. Help us to understand you. Help us to embrace you. Help us to demonstrate you to a world that needs you most. In the mighty name of Yeshua HaMashiach, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh, who is our Elohim. Well, Zion, we love you guys and appreciate you being here. We are a ministry that is literally supported by the donations and contributions of those of you who be fed off of these programs. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're here 3 times a week to help you remember how to be and practically operate as a kingdom citizen. So if the Lord should ever decide, or Adonai should ever, or Ruach HaKodesh should remind you, hey, let's be a blessing to a ministry that's been a blessing to us, feel free to do that. We want to make sure you're able to do that by going to vwjministries.com. Go and look at the yellow button on the lower part right of that screen. And we also have other options that you can have. Of course, typically, y'all know whatever your apps are these days, Cash App, Zelle, Venmo, we're all out there too. All right. So just consider doing that if that's a part of your plan to be a blessing. When you can be a blessing. But remember too, let me remind you of this. We're in a 31-day challenge and we're about day 18, day 17 into it. And that is where every day you get up, you read Ephesians chapter 6, 5-9 before you go to work. And sometimes at lunch break, read it again, because your job is going to be trying you and testing you. But if you read this, it'll show you how to do it Elohim's way. And if you just read Ephesians 6, 5-9, and maybe you want to read it 1-10, or maybe you can even go down and do it from 5-16, you'll see you in this process and how it pleases the Father to do him well and to do him right. Well, again, this is Apostle V.W. Jones. We're so glad to have had you here today. And I want you to remember, you are on the proceeding word, and man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh, our Elohim.
If you need truth, this is the place for you. Don't need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word itself approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences. Let love heal all that's broken.